Alright, what you're looking at here is remnants of a clutch from a 350 Chevy. As you can see, the pressure plate's got some wear marks in it pretty good. But the reason I'm doing this is not because of that. I want to show you why this clutch failed, and I can show you pretty conclusively what's going on. See this spring right here? See how those have come out of their deal. There's what they look like out of their place. And there's more pieces that came out of this pressure plate when the whole thing disintegrated. And if you look careful, you can see some pretty good sized cracks on this side. So this pressure plate was, see there's one there, there's another one right there. The pressure plate was pretty well stressed. And I'm going to show you why. This right here is the pilot bearing. It's supposed to be in the crankshaft. It fell out on its own. Didn't have to pull it out. I thought that was kind of weird. But the top bearing was functioning, and if you listen, it don't even sound too bad. But it gets replaced. That's just a given. But I'm going to show you how I know how this clutch failed, or why this clutch failed, and how I know that it failed. Partially because I took it apart and there was only 2 bolts holding the bell housing to the motor. And what happens when you have the bell housing loose from the motor is it causes the bell housing to do this. So if you have something fixed against the crankshaft back of the flywheel as this clutch, it's actually putting a side force on this clutch, causing it to want to do this. The weight of the transmission just makes the situation even worse. And one of the ways you can tell if one of these has come loose is you see how this is your dowel pin hole right here. Okay? And you can see this one here is fairly snug looking. I mean, it's full of dirt, but you can see it. And I'm going to swing over to the other side. And see this one? See, it's wallowed out. See how it's all egg-shaped? It's not a perfect circle. Look at the one on this side again. See? So, I'm not sure we probably can get away with that pin being that way. It's probably not the most ideal of circumstances, but if the bolts are all tight, it'll probably be okay. If not, I may look and see if I can get a sleeve or something to fix it, or just put another bell housing on it. These things aren't too terribly hard to find. This is a 350 to a 4-speed. But you can also tell the transmission was rubbing right here. See how polished up that is? That's from the transmission rubbing. If it's fixed tight against that bell housing, it doesn't do that. Again, you can see places where it's polished up. So I don't know if we're going to save that bell housing or not. We may change it, but I'm going to see what it costs to get another one and see what the guy wants to do with it. But yeah, these are common things that happen whenever your clutch fails. And if you look, sometimes, especially when you have mechanical damage like this is caused from something else, not just wore out. Not always just wore out. I mean, you can cause mechanical damage like this by yanking on it and doing things, you know, dumping the clutch and doing stuff like that. But this is more mechanical than that. And as you can see, the disc is down. You know, I mean, there's your rivets. They're starting to shine up, so it's down to the rivets. It needed changed anyway, but even on the pressure plate side, it was getting pretty thin. You can start to see the rivets, or see how that rivet's starting to polish on the end there. That means it's coming through. It's just about more prevalent on the other side. This one's a real good example right here. See how polished that rivet's head is? That's clear through. If you have a new disc, it'll look like that right there, more like that right there. But these rivets here, like that one, that one there is just about to come through. But when you're doing one of these clutches, one of the things that you want to look at, especially after mechanical damage like this one, you want to make sure this fork is straight, because sometimes these can get bent. You want to check this little ball holder and these clips, make sure they're not broke. Make sure these clips out here aren't broke, and make sure, turn it over this way and wipe that off real good, and make sure that that ball isn't wearing a hole clear through this. I've seen these go clear through these forks. And this little ball right here is another one you want to check. You want to make sure that it's pretty well round. And this one's still okay. It's got a little wear on it, but it's not horrible. And you can tell it's still pretty round. It looks funny because it's polished in places, but it's still in pretty good shape. It's round. It's not got a big flat spot on one side or worn badly to one side. I've seen them worn real bad to one side. But you need to make sure those are done, and of course this will get all cleaned up when it's all said and done. The flywheel has marks like this on it, and it's probably needing some surface work. But this is going to get an entire new. See the scratching right here? This is where the pieces that came out of this clutch right here. This is where them pieces were rubbing against the pressure plate. You see? Because the pressure plate goes on the like that. This is your flywheel side, and so you're see where that's on the same side, so that's why that's down in there rubbing against this, because it was coming out between the lining and the pressure plate. You can see where it chewed the lining up right there. So yeah, this pressure plate and disc and the throwout bearing and the pilot bearing all come in a kit, and it's highly recommended that you buy the entire kit and do it all at the same time. But I thought you folks might be interested in the details of clutch failure. I checked the pilot bearing on the nose of the transmission, and it had quite a little bit of wear. Inside you can see this bearing's pretty chewed up. And this is a little side note to the deal here, is this is another reason that I can tell that the transmission was loose from the motor bow housing and the motor, is because this came out by itself, and you can see it was walking around in there. You can see the edges of it are all rough right here, and because also this outside's all, see how shined up that outside is, and then there's looks like a line on there. There's actually a lip there, and I'm not so sure this bearing wasn't put in right to begin with from the looks of that line. But anyway, when that shaft of that transmission goes through there and it starts to wobble, it may have been a contributing factor to this the clutch failing, because this was wobbling and it just basically wobbled it, just wedged it on my finger there, and just wobbled itself out of the crankshaft until the bearing in the front input shaft and the transmission was going up and down like this totally. And I believe that led or had a lot to do with why this did what it did here, why these springs came out, and why the disc is cracked so badly. And if you look, you can see right here, see this right here? See how it's wider on one side than the other? Oh, that edge got sharp. Yeah, so this has been wobbling this way, out around for a while, and it's broken all this stuff loose. That's another reason, another way that you can tell that the input shaft on the transmission and the transmission was moving separate from the clutch. So it's a little side note that I discovered, and after a little bit more detailed look at it. But yeah, they all tell a story. You just have to look at the signs.